Hey, this is John Doyle from Optics EQ with Emily Gullickson.
Hello.
All right, so today, a little special, we're going to do a video race of the day and take you through Saratoga's very interesting race five of maiden claimer going 7 furlongs. Tricky race. And what we have pulled up here on the left hand side, you'll see Optics plot for the race, and on the right hand side, the notes. And with this race, the plot looks green and all that, it looks like a pretty good plot, great alignment. But there's more storylines here, right, Emily? This is a maiden race, so you got young, horses that are still developing, and they really haven't established, some of their form yet, and so it's a little tricky. So we're going to probably rely a lot more heavily on our notes, and that's where optics has it pretty much over everyone in terms of what we kind of the chock full of information we have on young developing horses and the style we use notes in. You won't see in traditional kind of PP. So we'll take you through, and I think we get some interesting insights into some of these horses. So
Yeah, and
Emily,
as we look at the plot, if we just kind of take the plot on face value, we have to understand that any of these maiden claiming race, I would look at the grid and make sure, see how many races these horses have had. If they've, if they're all maidens that have had 10 plus races, I would rely a little bit heavier on the plot. But in this case here, we have some horses that are second time starters, some horses that are off layup, some horses that are changing surface, that are doing different distance. And there's just a lot going on that's sort of new. And even though we have a good, solid surface distance and standard, there's really not a big sample size for those horses. So again, if we just kind of look at this plot, we'd go, wow, the 9 looks, really strong, and which is your favorite. And so before we just kind of give the race to the 9, we want to kind of look at that 9 horse who is a second time starter and kind of go from there. And I know that's how we have the or the plot filtered right now.
right? And
Explain
so if you look at the table down, one of the things that Emily suggested we do, you kind of if you sort by morning line, right? You can sort by morning line down there. Tables, you can sort on anything, right? So we sorted on morning line with the favorite coming up to the top. So the order we wanted to kind of take it, because the way we handicap is we start with the favorite, right? We want to know if the race is, playable or not, and the way to do that is you assess the favorite. So that's where we'll start. We'll go through these horses and one by one, and just kind of give you some insights. So
Right.
Emily, so we're going to start with the 9 Sugar Trip. This is Eddie Keneally and Javier Castellano. Probably going to take a lot of money. Top speed figure, like you said, looks great on the plot. Every computer model in the world was going to put this horse on top. What are we seeing?
Yeah, so even, just going back to looking at when we did that filter and we look at the plot, you can see that this horse is coming off 50 plus day layoff. So to me, I'm like, what's going on with this horse? Why, why for the layoff when it ran such a good race first out? And so maiden special weight race, 6 furlongs. The horse finished second, good speed figure, dueled. This horse kind of showed some speed, broke from the 11 post. I think it's up 10, but he was 11 that day. Was outside, kind of. It was like a dual press. He's kind of pushing the pace outside of horses, and coming into the stretch, the horse got a little funky. It was kind of late lead change. The horse that was on the lead at the time was kind of drifting. This horse, minor as well, and was under a real all-out drive. I mean, probably, there's no whip rule in Kentucky, I know that I'm aware of, but there might have been a penalty if there was. Giving this horse a lot of encouragement and deep stretch. And the winner, the horse that won the race, Birdtown, nice horse, came back and won at Saratoga earlier this meet. But this horse kind of was second more or less by default. The race didn't really fall apart. This horse was close to the pace. Aside, Birdtown was kind of a pocket style trip, trying to go off memory, kind of pocket style trip. So came from 3 to 5 lengths back, was fairly close, and same with the third and fourth place finishers. So, kind of looking at that race is that 6 furlongs, and that the horse was dueled, but a bit under a drive. It wasn't super encouraging to see 7. I wasn't that thrilled about that. I wouldn't, looking at that race going 7. I think you can kind of even see in the finish, lost a little bit of ground on the end.
Yeah. I think the big question here for me, when I first saw this, is why the drop. I mean, if this horse
Right.
ran against a nice horse that won the race and finished a good second, why the drop? Now, why not? If you're looking for a little bit softer maiden special, why not just try Kentucky? In a couple of weeks. Churchill, is going to probably resume pretty soon here. Why go in this race? And I think in general, like you said, even though there was a nice horse that came out, and we'll see this with other horses out of the Churchill race. Churchill maiden special weights are not the same as New York's maiden special weights or California maiden special weights. So just keep that in mind when you compare horses as those different venues. It's just a different class level. Now you may get a special horse come out of a Churchill race, and that race might be special. And we're going to show you. Later on, Emily mentioned, there was one nice horse that came out of that race, and then the rest were garbage. But
yeah, they were very. The rest of the field was pretty average. They really hasn't done much aside from the winner.
Yeah, garbage was a harsh word. But anyway, if you see our key race method that we described last time, you'll see it in a little bit down the line when we get to number 7, Stone. Really interesting. So I guess Emily, for me is. There's a horse
there's questions on this.
There's questions.
Right. So at a short price, a horse that we have some questions on. The layoff, the drop, at a distance. There's things that are questions on this horse, to say the least.
Right, and the horse is going to be hammered well below that 2-1. Let's face it. Right. Okay, so we go to at least the morning line second choice is the number 5, just a little bit more.
Right. So this horse, kind of the green that pops out on debut. We gave this horse a move, and then gave an improve the second time out, and noticed probably go longer and turf, and that's an aqueduct note. So I'm guessing that was Matt at the time. And then, I caught the horse at Belmont, and I also thought this horse was turf. And you can kind of look at the extended comment, and there's high knee action, not the most efficient mover. And then we have a C and no keep from the last time out. So this horse as a second choice, even though it's dropping, is not exciting to me.
Yeah, no one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he wants. I'm not sure he wants turf, but he hasn't been really good on turf. So I think, especially cutting back, even though it's both one-turn races. I mean, off a race like that, I don't get it. Other than the drop. I mean, and this is a legitimate drop, right? Because it's Belmont, but they started this horse early in his career at Aqueduct, and you think he would got the maiden done over there if he was any good. Now it's Saratoga, so. Yeah, I'm not feeling the love for this.
Right, and even at that, and this is a 7, and even at that 6.5 race, we have stretch, so it's not, that's not a positive. We think that.
Yeah, and look at this, Emily. Look at his debut at.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Yeah, in a 6-horse field too. Yeah, a lot of times, Hushin horses are second time, so I mean that could be it. But I agree.
Yeah, it's a big price. Okay, so enough. We're not gonna spend a lot of time because we don't need to spend a lot of time.
Right.
The notes, right? So the next one we'll move on to the 3, which is again we're going in order of morning line. So we think the favorite might be vulnerable, and the second choice is toss for us. So what about the number 3 coming off a huge layoff?
Well, yeah, I think that's it. And there's a positive note on this horse from the debut here last year. The horse had trouble at the break, was green, needed the race, and should stretch. 1-turn mile at Belmont is kind of, we thought. I'm guessing, yeah, this was late in the meet for this horse, and then hasn't been seen for a year. So, the layoff is one thing, and it could be almost the same thing that we saw last year. Prep for a mileage.
Right.
Except for the fact that it's a drop.
Yeah, the other thing here is, and I'm just looking at a horse, especially when you go from a 2 to 3-year-old, horses could improve, right? And So it's almost like he's almost like a first time starter again as a 3-year-old. And
Yep.
so to me, he's a little bit more of an X factor. I wouldn't toss a horse like this, right? Because I just don't know. So he's a little bit hard to gauge. So again, price will dictate where I go with this. So I just think, just because he ran the number looks low in comparison to some in here, but again, remember, that is a 2-year-old number, so there's a lot of projection.
3-year-old number.
Typically.
This is a 4-year-old.
Oh, is it? Okay, I'm old man. Okay, never mind. So anyway, so then I'm less positive on this horse. With that being said,
Yeah.
okay,
and this is a horse, like we said, that will take money because there are trainer stats that are kind of positive, that look positive here. And I kind of pulled one that we can talk about. Rudy, when he had like this long layoff and it's 180 days, it's going to show that he's 8 for 28. But a lot of those are off a trainer switch, and in fact, only one of those was his own horse making this kind of a move. So, that horse will get bet kind of based on that stat. You sort of like dig a little bit deeper in there, you'll find out that there's some different stuff going on. And most of his horses that are making this move go off in less than 5-1 and are 0 for 7 here at Saratoga. So there's some question marks kind of surrounding this horse where the stats are going to look somewhat positive on paper and not necessarily the case.
yeah, that's a tricky thing. You need to Emily's point. You need to kind of dig a little bit, and we start with the horse itself because good horses
The most
make
important part.
good horses make trainers look good. So that's kind of the starting point. And those things are important. As maybe secondary or even down the road as separators. When you're trying to make a final decision, but be careful of statistics that all created equal. There's things with in terms of sampling sizes and so forth. So just be careful. You can kind of get immersed in them and lose perspective sometimes. All right,
Right.
so let's go to the 2, and Will did it. And so what do you think about this horse, Emily? Because I have an opinion about this, but
Oh, well, why don't you go for it?
okay. So I just think these are kind of horses. Again, it's I wouldn't bet this horse in the win end, right? Just because even though he hasn't lost, I hate horses that are lost below the level, but this kind of was a loss below the level. He ran a B minus. It's okay, but again, Churchill is not um, Saratoga, and this horse has had his chances, right? I mean, run a lot of races, and again, some of the tracks he's run at haven't been the rest. Oh, an interesting thing though is the Keeneland race kind of pops out. He ran a good race. He did get a perfect trip, but he did run a pretty good race at Keeneland. The way I handle a horse like this is a horse I would not throw out. Let's say if I was going to go playing a multi-race bet, like a pick 4, or this is the last leg of a pick 5, I would use this horse as a backup, sparingly. And then probably use the horse somewhat in the bottom rungs of an exotic, because he's good enough, he's capable enough, he's fast enough. So this is not a horse you just kind of want to toss. But again, and he gets, this guy's been hot and he's been riding well because he's aggressive. So, that's just my take on this horse. I don't love him, but again, I would use him defensively in this race.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and something that from a gambling standpoint of why you would use a horse like this is because we think the first 3 choices of the morning line, the 3 betting favorites are soft to vulnerable, and a horse like this who's kind of sitting next, and like you brought up points, fast enough, has some races, jock is riding well. This horse has speed. He has a B. He's got a BOS grit, so he's got a race in there where where it figures. It's a horse to use that's less exciting to bet to win, but more value in your multi-race sequences.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Let's move on to number 4. Yeah. You had a note on this horse, Emily, just recently added, right?
Yeah. I just recently added the Indiana, and I have a note on the Ellis horse. We just added Ellis to our list of tracks, and so my note goes back before we added it because it's from a year ago. But this horse on debut ran a BTL race. This is the Ellis race, not the Indiana, but the Ellis race, BTL race, traffic, made two moves and closed against the flow, galloped out. And then obviously had some issues. Came back as a favorite at Churchill Downs. It was a sloppy track. Summer got a C plus. Was the favorite that day. Goes to town. A horse who's shown a little bit of potential as 3-year-old, but kind of another Lucas horse. And then the last time out, ran on the turf, and you kind of look at his running line and compare to the note. You see he's kind of far back on that first call, but he actually did kind of break well and then just sort of let the other horses go. So it's not a horse that's necessarily like a real off the pace, like deep closing type horse. He's a little bit versatile, and then Jock kind of fell asleep a little bit halfway through the race and let this horse kind of get buried, and then was inside late, kind of an even finish. Seemed like the outside was better. They're adding blinkers, and I think that will help the horse in a sense that keep him just a little bit more focused, maybe keep him a little bit sharper earlier. So I think that's not a negative. I think that's an okay move here for this horse. But going back to that first race, it was a horse that showed potential, and obviously, he was bet next time out. So, and that was going 7 furlongs, and then the track came off. So this is a horse that is interesting to me here. I think that there's more upside to this horse. He's now third off a layoff. Cox is riding well. Bridgman rode this horse before, and an interesting horse here that the notes kind of help you out on this horse.
Yeah, I think what they're trying to find is what this horse wants to do, and it looks like, in a small career here, his best race again. But the note I had on the horse was, he's an X factor because he's never run on a fast track, right?
Right.
Fast dirt track, so we don't know. But it might be the right spot. Looks like the right kind of drop, where opposed to some of these other drops, you kind of like the 9 with Suspect. This drop makes more sense to me. And and again, Bridge Mahan gets reacquainted with the horse. He did ride the horse in that one dirt sprint at Churchill, which was a while back. And like you said, one of the trainer statistics I do like, is just kind of just who's hot lately. And to your point, Cox is doing very well, right? His horse is firing because that makes sense to me because trainers kind of cycle for certain things and certain meets. You see that every year. It may happen at different times, but a certain barn is going to have their upsides and downsides, and but when they're going to have it. You kind of try to figure out. You start seeing it coming. So it looks like Cox is starting to catch fire a little bit there at Saratoga. So that's a good thing. So yeah, I think this horse is viable. Like I said, is when you start kind of knocking out horses that are going to be short priced, it kind of opens it wide open. And this horse looks like again his dirt race was good enough. And with improvement, he definitely could factor here. So I think he's a win contender. Again, depends on his price and so forth, and depends on how you're looking at this race in terms of spreading or not. But I would definitely consider him as a potential win contender. Okay, moving on. So you want to handle the entry here together or what? I mean, this is.
We'll talk about them separately, I suppose. And
okay.
Then,
all right. Let's start with the one.
Kind of put them together and see if maybe we prefer one over the other, and if one scratches, what we want to do with the other. So starting with the one, the first thing kind of jumps out with me is exactly what you circled.
Right.
Are the excessive amount of layoff line. So a horse that has some issues. For sure. Now they're dropping. Horse on debut, dueled, second time out, broke slow, cold barn. Ran a good horse when he showed up at Aqueduct, and again, D- showed some speed. So, unexciting from the layoff standpoint. Barn is still cold. Um, Numbers are a little soft. I guess you can project a little bit of improvement there. Um,
The race too, Emily, did
Potential
not
pace.
come back. I'm sorry to interrupt. The race on the this race did not come back very strong either.
No, no. I think Matt made the note there. Maybe that was you. Ran second to a well-meant first-time starter.
Yeah, but the whole race did not come back all that great. So
right. Okay.
So anyway, so I'm kind of negative on this horse, and
Yeah.
it's been cold for a long time. Okay, and I don't like this one much better, but why don't you tell me why you don't like this one? I mean, as soon as I see, like, this is what I love about notes. As soon as I see red, it's like, okay, the first thing I do when I see this, Emily, I see red, I look for the odds of the horse, the morning line. I just jump right there because I look for, it's almost okay, something's not right here. I'm looking for opportunity. Um, to me, this thing, again, no finish, twice in a row, ouchie.
Again, another horse with a
He's
lot
got
of
one. He's got one out. He's got a couple of outlier numbers, but they were back last year. It doesn't look like he's made improvement. Saez goes elsewhere. This horse, I'm really not too fond of. So I'll be skipping. I don't know about you.
Yeah. This one's tricky because I know, like, when you look at it, you went from the top down, and I kind of went from the bottom up. So I got a little bit of a different story, but then I was turned away once I got to the top because this horse ran, he ran a good start, he ran a good race on debut, and then the second time out, he was an excuse, and then we can be a little forgiving on the third one, then came back at Saratoga and just was terrible, and then ran another B, ran fresh, good race, Keeneland, higher level, going 2 turns, he was against the flow the next time, and then he was against the bias, so it's like this horse is dirty, right? So each time you could kind of make an excuse for him to be a win candidate. And then at Aqueduct, the horse, the first time the horse shows up and he's warm, pressed and he's ouchy. So something happened where this horse just went very much the wrong way. Disappears for 113 days. There's a vet scratch in between. At a free trip, so no other horses around him. Plotting and just, no finish. So he returns at the same level. Off those last 2, it's unexciting, but there were some races where I was reading and I was like, oh, yeah, good. Okay, I could see this, and all of a sudden it was like, ooh, downhill path.
That's a good point. I mean, by the way, what you said is the right way to kind of read this way, right? I cheated, right? I went here and then I kind of looked up, but just kind of looking at this and the points she made about, these layoffs too. And she goes fast because she's good and she's been doing this a long time. But again, these keywords, all kind of are explained here in this keyword dictionary. So just make sure you kind of take a look at that until you get familiar with it. But in these keywords, it's just a chock full of information, and so. Like Emily, she's kind of like almost telling us it's like a storyline for the horse,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's you can really get it quickly once you start understanding what the keywords mean. You can really understand, the story behind the horse, than as opposed to just a number associated with a horse or a trainer or whatever. So this is what we're talking about. Why what we do that's a little bit different. Well, completely different than most information providers. So, but it'll take you a little while, but once you get it, this is where you're going to kind of separate. This is where you're going to kind of separate yourself maybe in a contest and find a horse at a big price because this information and the way you process that information is different, and the way you interpret it could be different from other folks that interpret it. But when let's say if you're in a contest, it's the end of the contest. And there's something there, either a note like this or like a trouble line or it's not even just trouble, but subtle things about a horse, he became angry, something like that, man, that could be the separator that you need. And that's really what optics notes brings for the players. Okay, right. Let's move on. Let's go to number 6. Again, I just wanted to point out with this again, this difference between Churchill and Saratoga and California, just those maiden special weights. And main claimers aren't the same. So just keep that in mind. And then the other thing I want to just point out, I know we went over this last time, but sometimes if you see this flag, just make sure you pay attention because that figure may not be all that reliable. So just keep that in mind. Not very exciting running lines, not really exciting notes here in terms of information. Just basically, hey, the horse kind of went around the track and didn't do much. So, Emily, anything to add on this horse?
No, I mean, I think this one's there's a B minus at below the level, and again, kind of lots of layoff lines and nothing really. I don't really see much positive being in like the most forgiving stance. So there's really nothing encouraging for me to use this horse.
Yeah, I would say if this horse shows any kind of trip or improvement in this race, look for him back at Churchill. Maybe they sneak him over at
Yeah, and Roman's this meet. He's been a little chilly. His last win was we did the race of the day. We did that turf race, and it ended up like downpouring massively like right before, and his horse actually ended up winning that race. I think that's his only win of the meet. So, and that was a horse coming off big layoffs, and it was a huge dropper. And this horse doesn't really fit that. I mean, looks on paper like a drop, but when understanding the different circuits, it's not too much of a drop.
Yeah. Okay. Now we go to a horse that looks interesting to both of us,
Absolutely.
Right? So you want to start with this one from the bottom because this horse is very intriguing, and we have a morning line here of 15-1. So
yeah, before actually I even get into the running lines or our notes, let's look at the actual running lines, and you can kind of see why this horse was made 15-1 because you can see this horse has been beaten double-digit lengths in his last two starts, and then not far off on the previous two. So that little square that you just made, for the most part, that's what people are looking at. Now we'll kind of move over and kind of look, again, what's different, the information that is a separator, that is unique, that is different, and can kind of make those running lines come to life and much more interesting. So from the bottom up, so February 13th, ran a B minus race, was slogged, so it was off slow, made a burst, and a burst lost footing at the start. So a burst is not a keyword that we throw around often. That is a horse that made a serious acceleration. So that horse is a burst, no lead and improve, and then came back, and then this horse came back and came back on February 27th. Now what's tricky about this horse gets an other, and to me, this horse just came back too soon. Came back on 2 weeks rest after running a really, really, really good race and kind of a tough race on debut, having to make that burst, losing the footing, things like that. And coming back in 2 weeks, the horse just wasn't recovered. So that race to me is, you can be forgiving on that. And then this Keeneland race, is a C plus. This horse had, was a trouble start, wide and no lead, but this is a strong race. We should probably pull this up for a key race.
Yeah, let's look at this race. This race is super live. And again, what I did was I just clicked on that race, went to plot, went over to grid, and just to see what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually include this race because I want to show you something too. I'm going to include this race. I'm going to say greater than or equal to 2016. The race of this date, the date race was 4-9. So I'm going to include it in there because I want to make a point. But if you just look at, since this race has been run, these are all the horses that have come back. And, these are pretty good running lines. You have a horse that was second in the Indiana Derby. You have a horse that was second in the Easy Goer. Okay, this horse ran 13, but he ran in the Belmont, 6th in the Survey. This is and also look, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 next out winners out of 29 races, and there was another 7 in the money. This is a strong race. One other thing I want to show you too is if you look at, so this is the race and the improvement in optics fix. since that race, for all the horses. I'm just going to circle a couple here, but I did the math here, and essentially we're talking about on average a 14-point improvement to the next race. The only horse that didn't do it was a horse that actually was, on a racetrack that was kind of a little shaky. It was a sloppy racetrack. But all the other horses that have come back have run about 14 to 15 points higher. That's significant. So when we talk about strong race, that's a strong race. So this is a way to kind of assess that. And not just the last race, but also, you could see that these horses went on. Young horses, again, they're developing, went on to do some really good things. Here's a fifth in the Jim Dandy. So this was a good key race. So.
All right.
Okay. We get back to
and then pretty much so we kind of go back. So coming off that key race.
Just one thing too.
Sure.
In his debut too, talk about key races. Horse ran against Star Hill too. So
yeah,
that was another solid race. And again, those Gulfstream special weights are the real deal, right? So is Keeneland. So.
Yeah, I mean the race following was a key race as well, including a horse that finished in the money in the Florida Derby, that won the race. So this horse has been coming out of some really, really, really strong fields.
Okay, and then the next time they're going to try this horse going 9 furlongs on the turf at Churchill, right?
Right, and this is an EX race.
Right.
I don't know if you want to read that. It's hard for me.
Yeah, it says, let me just click it here so we can see it. So it's willing to draw a line through turf, debuted after slow break, never looked overly comfortable early stages while in pocket, eventually took up hold going into the final. So it just kind of wrapped up on the horse. I guess it was an experiment or, just perhaps.
Yeah, because I mean, this was first off the trainer change, right?
Yeah.
Went from, even at the same
probably.
trainer.
Yeah. I was just trying to understand what he had.
Right.
So now he gets a drop at the maiden claiming 40, which, like you said, probably not a lot of people anxious to dip in with those running lines, right? But
right.
We think it tells a different story. You got a trainer. I don't know what the trainer stats are of this, but I bet you they're all going to be weak. He's not having a great meet, so he won't be pounded because of that. So this horse is going to be a long shot and a viable one as far as I'm concerned, right? He's run in his number, his second race, the 80 is good enough, with a little bit of improvement to kind of win this race. So I think this horse is going to be overlooked, going to be a big price, and needs to be considered in all the slots as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I think if there is, one thing that, with the notes and with the running line, something you do have to be aware of, and why you would want value on a horse like this is the slog. That's not a one-time thing, and it is with a different trainer and different things. Maybe they work something out. Not that Ian Wilkes is known for his horses not breaking slow, as we know, but this horse has had a tendency in the past that does break slow. So
and then the other thing, right? I mean, if you consider him, he's gonna have to win this from off the pace. So. But I mean, price dictates. So I mean, again, and especially even underneath in exotics, this horse will make you happy.
We do kind of let's reference the plot again real quick, because I know we talked about it early on of being like not a plot that we're that strong on. But one thing that you can see is that there's a chance for a contentious quadrant one. You do have a good bulk of horses that are in there, so. Even though this horse, if it does break slow and is going to make his run late, there should be a lot of horses that are forwardly placed to have some kind of pace up front. So that is a scenario.
Yeah, I still think that probably the 9 could dominate the early pace, but we made some of the case against him, so we'll see. But he's going to have to come off the pace, which is always difficult, because if you look at the impact, that's going to be a slightly negative. But like to your point, there might be contention, and like you said, we don't with these horses. We may not be seeing their best because their running lines, in the case of the 7, don't represent probably the total story on this horse. So, just like you're looking at his running lines here, a little bit, right? The plot's going to look a little bit the same. So that's just something to point out. Down the road, we got to figure out how to incorporate some of the notes into some of the plots, but that's just the way it is right now. It's, we're really kind of looking at the same information to build a plot. So anyway, but that's the 7, and quickly we can round it out with the 8. Okay.
Yeah, so the 8 horse here, as a win candidate, I'm not interested. This horse has been at the level 3 times. They're about, the 50, 50, 40, and it's below, right? B minus, B minus, C plus. But I would not throw this horse out of an underneath spot. In fact, this is a horse that could be kind of a real price changer in a superfecta bet. I think this horse could easily factor underneath. He kind of has some trips. We wanted this horse to drop. Had some trouble start. 2 B minuses at the level would figure for an underneath 3rd, 4th place. So yeah, that's kind of where I see.
And he's run his best races on the dirt, right? Looks like
yep.
He's not a turf horse, so
yeah.
I agree. So he's
not as a win candidate, but a horse to use in that 3rd and 4th spot.
Okay, I think we covered everybody, and just a quick review. I think we had the 1, and the 1A is as basically a toss, and we also 3, 5, 6 were tosses too. And I think the important thing is here we were lukewarm on the favorite, and we thought the 7 and presented probably the best value in terms of overall as far as a key horse. The 7 was the key horse, and some of the other horses that we had talked about maybe possibly underneath. And one other win candidate I think we had was the
4.
Yeah, the 4. Yeah, Enduring Warrior. So 4, 7 win candidates. A little bit vulnerable on the favorite, and some of these others, I think you kind of play around there.
Yeah, and I think kind of like the bigger picture, because of course, we encourage everybody to just look at this information, interpret it your own way, because we don't know the answers right now. We're just, we're looking at this race, but most importantly, we're able to get information that's not available most other places, and starting to assess the favorite and how strong is that. And I think those are really important factors that not a lot of people do when they're handicapping, and very important for betting.
Yeah, it's critical. It's got to be a number 1 decision point, in terms of, am I going to play the race, pass the race, right? And I think it's been cornerstone of my handicap for years in gambling. So, and I know a lot of other players, right? So I think that's it. I mean, is there anything else in terms of this race you want to kind of close with, Emily?
No, I think we kind of gave a good overview. Obviously, we'll have the video up. We'll have both this plot and grid will be static on the race of the day section of our website, and then always encourage comments either below or on Twitter. We love to hear from you and your ideas. If you see it different or you look at the information, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, me too. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll catch you next time.